So some called her Carmen, others called her Margot, but I called her Mum. Mum used to say there are two sides of the story and the truth. And with Mum you never know what you got. And the truth gets in the way of a good story anyway. But here's what Mum told me. Carmen Marguerite, born in March 1934, is one of 10 children born in Colombo to Dutch Burgher parents. Papa was a raging drunk and their greatest indulgence was that each of them got a pair of shoes at Christmas. There is little money for food, but the neighbours had chickens, and the boys used to nip over the fence and steal one. Then you'd hear the neighbours scream, "Those bloody oysters!" The house backed onto a swamp of tortoises, and they'd attach candles on their backs and charge people to see the swamp without removing candles. Mum wanted to be a nurse, but Papa wouldn't sign the papers. So she decided to move to London, and Papa, the mother, like I said, couldn't stop her. She started at secretarial school before becoming a hairdresser working with the Dow's soon. It was in London that she met Fernando, a handsome PhD student studying anatomy. "Tell me how you met Dad," I asked again. "I was being chased by a bull in a paddock, and Dad was wearing a red coat and he waved at so that I could get away." Now I believe that story for way longer than I should have. Dad said he met Mum on the steps of the Opera House and she was under a red umbrella and he thought, "I'm going to marry her." Dad was, in Mum's word, a rogue. They were fast friends. He'd tell her about one girlfriend knocking on the door and he'd have the famous to get the one he was with to leave out the back door. I knew that, but I still married him. Idiot. There's a slideshow later and you can see them at parties, stolen street signs, whiskey on the table. Dad's with his fiancée and his friend Carmen is in the middle of the group. Then they're talking, and the fiancé's looking worried, and then there's no fiancé. They moved back to Sri Lanka where Mum introduced her fiancé Daryl to her father, and he reached out his hand, but Papa wouldn't shake it. They then married in secret at a registry, which at the time in Sri Lanka meant you were excommunicated. Dad was a vet in Sri Lanka and was also teaching. And in becoming nationalist government and the insistence on renaming bones, which are in Latin, was the sign to leave. They applied everywhere and got offers from Canada, I heard it was cold, and Sudan, which was hot. Fantastic. They were all packed for Sudan when a letter came from Australia for Dad to set up the anatomy department at the University of New South Wales Medical School. They came during the White Australia policy and you had to show proof of your European heritage. Dan came as an important professional program and was one of the first dozen immigrants of colour into Australia. It was a tough start, knowing no one, but Mum and Dad were beautiful and funny and charming and worked their asses off. If we were at a party and I wanted to find one of them, I just looked for a cluster of people laughing and leaning in, and they'd be at the centre of it. Dad went off to work and Mum was left with the kids. I'm not sure what inspired her to start the restaurant at a time most mothers didn't work. She had talent and ambition, but most of all I think came from growing up poor and not wanting to be dependent on anyone. The restaurant, Tickery, was the first Sri Lankan restaurant in Sydney. At a time when most exotic food you could find was Chinese, it was revolutionary. It was a special place. The youth students working there worked all the way through, then their sister or brother worked there too. There was no staff turnover, but they kept Mum on their toes. Brendan, who was a bit of a hothead somewhere here, at the time, brought in a marijuana plant, mostly to torture Mum, I think, who thought she'd get high from it in its vicinity. It was at that time that two policemen came in for takeaway, and Mum grabbed that plant, holding it out and running down the corridor to hide it. At home, Mum and Dad would argue about who was cooking. Dad would sneak in and make his dal full of curry leaves and spinach and spices, and Mum would say, "When your father cooks, you have to eat it." Mum became the main breadwinner and Dad encouraged her in her work. It was through her business that they built Luberia Street, and Mum designed it closely with the architect. This was just one part of Mum's ingenuity. Dad was smart, book smart, but Mum was clever. With a bit of flirting, she could get anything done. She'd get a plumber to quote on installing her toilet, lean in and ask him the name of that part and where to get it, and then she'd do the work herself. Mum had me at age 33 and Ren at 35. In 2005, when Shana, Ren's eldest, was born, she was 71. I only realised that yesterday, because they were so youthful. Mum and Dad would have the 3 kids over for the better part of the day. After an hour, Dad would go to the gym. I'd tap out in about 2 or 3 hours, but Mum would be there completely energised by any small thing they did. She was an entirely present grandmother. I think it's easy to look back at parents who worked and notice an absence. But for me, what I saw and what I learned was dogged determination, despite the odds, to make the best life for yourself and your family. Mum always told me, as did Dad, never to be reliant on a man. Until they died, they never had a joint bank account. For me, she was more present than any other stay-at-home mum could be. As a mum of a teenager now, only now do I understand how much Mum did that was unseen and unappreciated. She took us to camping, dancing classes, tap, jazz, ballet, clearly hoping we'd be graceful. We weren't. Piano classes, which at least in Renika's case paid off. She was incredibly religious and wanted her to share her faith. This also did not go well. The priest visited Mum at least twice at primary school because 8-year-old me kept questioning him. She'd take us to church and read a book. Every time the word root came up in the Bible passage, we giggled. Then as teenagers, she'd ask if we were coming to church and we'd shout out from the TV room, "No!" And she'd shout back, "You have no God!" and slam the door. And when she got back, none of us had moved from the couch, and Dad would ask, "What did God say?" And she was not amused. She struggled with bipolar and found comfort in the church. My parents were always adopting people into our home, whether it was coming, whose parents had to return to Sri Lanka, and then lived with us for 3 years, my cousin Rachel, who lived with us during uni, or just a girl that out on the plane who had nowhere to go. Mum showed compassion, not through words, but through action. She visited disabled people in their homes and did categorisations, helped elderly nerve neighbours, volunteered at the Children's Hospital with kids with cancer, and later volunteered for over a decade with the Asthma Foundation. None of these came with recognition or glory. It was quiet, often thankless work. Her favourite saying was, "Where but the grace of God go I," and she led with that empathy in all things. At home, Dad was a good cop and Mum, with much resentment, was the bad cop. She was also Sri Lankan and still had conservative values. Once friend called Mum was sweeping in her room, so she rolled up tea leaves in rolling paper and hid them in her underwear drawer. And Mum found them and lost it. Friend said, "It's only tea." And Dad and I thought it was hilarious. But Mum did not. Dad worked in England every 4 years on lot ends, so we met him on holidays and travelled in a VW Kombi van on the hippie trail in convoy from London to Sri Lanka by way of every major European city, through the Middle East, Afghanistan to Pakistan. And Mum said we were going to see Indians, and I remember coming home and feeling that there were only brown people. No feathers, no TVs, nothing. Dad would hold up maps without details, just a red line, and Mum followed wherever he led. They say life is an adventure, but ours really was. As someone who's been perpetually single, I went on a lot of holidays with my parents. They met me when I went to Cambodia, the UK, and Sri Lanka. And as an aid worker, I worked with incredibly interesting and talented people. But the most interesting people, the people I admired most, were my parents. I'd be there 3 times a week at least. Free food had something to do with it, but they were my favourite people. I was a very ill child. My parents were always worried they would lose me. But I remember both being very present at the hospital, the restaurant, and home. It was 80s, so nobody knew where we were until the lights came on, so admittedly the bar was pretty low. I'd be studying, and Mum would walk into the room, and I feel we're coming to the end, guys. And Mum would come into the room, kiss me 3 times on the hand and leave, or bring me a cup of tea. It was over cups of tea that Mum shared and wonderful stories. So I was working at that centre, or you know the centre kind of afterwards where they work with kids in the community teaching skills. Anyway, there's this big Aboriginal boy called Oliver with all these earrings and tattoos, and they said, "Stay away from him." So I just walked right up to him and I said, "Should I be scared of you? Should I?" And he said, "No." And I got him a job as an electrician, but then tools went missing and I thought he'd get paid. So he ran away, but every Mother's Day he leaves a red rose at the gate. Now let me tell you how many times I have tried to find Oliver. Does he exist? Who knows? He'd get upset, say she's lying, but at a certain point I didn't care because her stories were beautiful. After Dad died, it was Mum that convinced me to stay and foster a child. We had tenants in our old house and she pretended she was doing a site inspection with the real estate agent, but really she took the caseworkers around to inspect the house, which is to say she was pretty committed. When Anthony came to us, he was 10, just before lockdown. He never got the best of Mum. I often wish I could share Anthony with Dad, but what I got to do was share Anthony with Mum for the last 6 years, and that's a real gift. Their bond was something that renewed your faith in people. He got the best of her that she could be, and he got an Archie who enjoyed him and loved him unconditionally. As Mum got to mention her grasp on memory and conflagration of reality would dominate the world. Stories of the way we make sense of the world and dimension makes no sense. It is a cruel disease that takes us one memory at a time. I want us to remember her life, not just in the way it ended, but in the way she lived. Selflessly, with empathy and compassion, with warmth and humour, and a driving conviction that we must hold our hand to people in need, because there, by the grace of God, go by. We will all miss you, Mum. Oh, I always put it to Anne this was this really ugly thing that I can't remember anything gave to Mum, or Mum gave to Rebecca. Now, I don't know how many times I've tried to get her to throw this kind of thing out, but she would not. This has followed her for like 50 years. So it's either back with you or it's going in the coffee.